Welcome everyone to Mayo Clinic Q&A. I'm Dr. Helena Gazelka. I'm so glad that you've joined us today. I hope you're ready to learn something because we have a great topic for you. Ductal carcinoma in situ, also known as DCIS, is an early form of a non-invasive breast cancer that begins as abnormal cells inside the milk ducts in the breast. There are multiple forms of treatment for DCIS, and at Mayo Clinic, research is ongoing to test a vaccine against the HER2 protein, which is often found in women who have DCIS. I have two great experts here to discuss this with me today, Dr. Amy Degnim, who's a surgeon here at Mayo Clinic, and Ms. Helen Gagood, who is a patient of Dr. Degnim's. Well, it's fun for us to have a patient here today because that isn't always all that common for us, so it's a fun thing. Dr. Degnim, I'm going to start with a question for you, if that's all right. Can you tell us how common DCIS is, and does it ever become an invasive type of cancer?
In the United States, there are about 50 to 60,000 women every year diagnosed with DCIS. If you look at that in comparison to the number of invasive cancers, it's about 1/4 of all breast cancers if you include both the DCIS and the invasive types. And most DCIS does not become invasive, but if it's not treated, about 30 to 40% of it can become invasive over time.
That's really interesting. I didn't realize that it was such a high percentage of the breast cancers. I mentioned in the intro that there are multiple treatment options for DCIS, and I'm hoping that you can share some of those with us. I understand that sometimes you watchfully wait and then sometimes all the way to mastectomy. Is that true?
Yes, there is really quite a range of options. The current standard treatment is to do a lumpectomy and remove the area of the DCIS. And we generally reserve mastectomy for cases where the DCIS is involving a really large area of the breast, and a lumpectomy wouldn't give a good cosmetic result. And then after surgery, in some cases, radiation is added or an anti-estrogen pill to help reduce the chance of the DCIS recurring. There are clinical trials that are going on all around the world to help us determine if some patients with DCIS might be able to avoid surgery, or maybe they would just be able to take the anti-estrogen pills and not develop a cancer later. But those clinical trials don't have results yet.
Helen, I'm going to move to you. Thank you so much for being here with us today. It's fun for us to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey with DCIS? When were you diagnosed?
I was diagnosed in October of 2019. The minute I received the information, I only had one thought. I wanted to hang up with the lady that was explaining a lot of things that I did not understand and call my husband. And I told him, call Mayo. I wanted to be seen by the best. I had a family member that had gone to Mayo before, and although I did not understand what Mayo could bring me, I knew that I was going to receive excellent treatment. And immediately after doing some research, I found out that Mayo has a lot of different competitive advantage, if you will. First, they have the frozen section pathology lab. What that means is that the surgeon can remove a portion of your cancer, and then the cells can be frozen and looked at under a microscope, and then the information goes back to the surgeon while he's still operating on you, he or she, I guess. And therefore, the surgeon can just remove a little area and expand until the margins are clear and there is no cancer in those cells. The other advantage of using this technology is that it avoids a lot of second, sometimes third surgeries, because in the room right there, the surgeon can make sure that the margins are clear and removes all that is necessary versus they sew you back, you go back to your room, and a few days later you find out, okay, I need another surgery. Another reason to go to Mayo is also because they have this proton radiation technology that allows to really target the area of the breast that they want to treat and it doesn't bleed into the heart like the old technologies were. And people may have heard of women that, 10, 15 years ago had a breast cancer, and unfortunately the radiation bled into their heart and it really damaged their heart. With the proton technology, it is a much safer way to have radiation, specifically when you have your cancer on the left side, which was my case. In addition, after doing a little bit of research, I found out that there was a trial that was going on for HER2 DCIS. And although learning the news was absolutely devastating, I felt like a building had collapsed on my head. I knew that I could do something good out of this bad news, and I wanted other women to avoid receiving the bad news that I had received. I have a daughter, I have nieces, and how cool is that, that out of cancer diagnosis, something good can come out of it. So that was another reason where I really wanted to go to Mayo. After the fact, I had two more reasons. One of them was I had just a beautiful surgery. I cannot say anything else except that my scar just looks beautiful. In addition to the quantity that was removed was really minimal. And then finally, the people at Mayo were just extraordinary. Dr. Degnim, I was going to her with my visit and I was like, oh, completely frazzled, and sometimes I could not even speak or function, and she was always so calm and so nice and explaining how things were going to happen. I had a great relationship with my radiologist, with for example, the surgeon, Dr. Tina Hyken, not to name her, and just everyone just was so friendly. The team that did my radiation, they were so compassionate and friendly. It was just the best experience ever.
I can't thank you enough for sharing that with us. I can only imagine what it is like to receive news like that, and for you to come through this so positively and be willing to share it with others. We really appreciate that. I'm curious if you could expand a little bit on what convinced you to participate in a clinical trial. I can only imagine that
I wanted something good to come out of these, and I also knew that this molecule had already been tested and that they were going to really monitor me closely, and therefore I felt that I could participate in this trial and make something, make a lemonade out of the lemons, knowing that I was in the hands of experts that were monitoring any possible side effects, where if I had exhibited any adverse reaction, they would immediately stop trying the vaccine on me. And then again, it was with Dr. Degnim here in Rochester, and she was so kind and compassionate and understanding that it was not a chore at all to have to see her 4 times over 6 weeks. The way the vaccine worked for me was I had a vaccine on one day, then again 2 weeks later, 4 weeks later, 6 weeks later. And now I'm going through monitoring to make sure that I do not have any side effect. But hopefully it's going to be the case for the majority of women. And hopefully in the future, we'll just get a vaccine in the same way we do it for hepatitis, for tetanus, and all these illnesses that used to be a big deal and that people died from. And hopefully I can participate as an anonymous person in the crowd to reverse the trend of having all these women finding out that they have this devastating illness and preserve their health, their organs. It is for women a very sensitive area. Overall, there's 1 out of 8 women that are going to have breast cancer in their life. And so if I can do my little part to help science for others, my daughter, my nieces, but maybe you, maybe my cousins or whomever, that would be fantastic, because then something good would have come out of these very bad news that I received. If I can avoid that for other women, that would make me very, very happy.
Helen, I'm so glad that you had confidence enough in your care at Mayo Clinic to participate in a study like this, and that you had the grace and kindness to participate and help others who come after you. I'm going to turn to Dr. Degnim now and ask you if you could explain to us how this vaccine trial works and who is a candidate for it.
This clinical trial is looking to boost immunity against this receptor that is called the HER2 receptor that I think was mentioned. It's a protein that is on the outside of cancer cells in some cases. In the situation of DCIS, these receptors are present to some degree in about 50 to 60% of women. So a lot of women will have this HER2 receptor on their DCIS cancer cells. And the idea is to give a vaccine against this receptor, or in other words, that gives the patient immunity to this protein that is on these cancer cells, so that their own immune response can help to clear away these cells and, essentially kill the cells that are abnormal and prevent similar future ones from growing. In terms of who we're looking for in this trial and who is a candidate, women who are age 18 and older, who have a new diagnosis of DCIS, that have not had any treatment yet. And the size of the DCIS needs to be at least 1 centimeter on imaging. And we're looking for women who are otherwise in good health.
Dr. Degnim, usually I think of a vaccine very simply as preventing a disease. And you're talking about treating women who already have a diagnosis with this. In the future, is the plan that it be used for both sets of women?
We actually have a previous trial of women who had invasive breast cancer who also had this HER2 protein expression, and have, the first vaccine trial of this vaccine was in women with invasive cancer. And we also saw a good immune response in that setting. Now we're looking at this trial for women with DCIS who have non-invasive disease. And yes, our research team does have interest and activities trying to move toward the prevention setting. We think that HER2 is one very interesting and promising protein that's related to cancer cells that may be effective for prevention. And there are other proteins as well that we're pursuing that maybe when combined could help to prevent the various types of breast cancer. So beyond invasive cancer versus non-invasive, there are these biological types of breast cancer that express the HER2 receptors or don't express the estrogen receptors or don't. And there are other similar sorts of markers that may be helpful in figuring out a prevention vaccine for all types of breast cancer.
Helen, I wanted to ask you if you would tell us all a little bit about what your experience was like when you were participating in this trial. What did you have to do and how did you feel while you were going through it?
Initially, I did not understand anything about anything. DCIS, what is it? Oh, really? It's not a cancer like others. Oh, yes, it is not invasive. And therefore, it does give me the time to have to participate in this trial, because it's not like I have cells that are multiplicating in my body. I do have the time to take the time and go through this trial. And maybe it's gonna help me, other women. So I had the time to ask questions, educate myself. The Mayo team greatly helped me. I had the opportunity to work with someone, and as you may know, at Mayo, doctors don't have like the 10 minutes that maybe other organizations have, and they take the time to explain everything at great lengths. Just before any appointment, they give you a piece of paper and a pen, and then you have to write all your questions. And therefore, you come equipped with knowledge, and you can participate in your care, and you feel empowered by having the knowledge and people that respond to you and that explain things when you have questions. So I felt very good about being in good hands, understanding all the steps, Mayo also has this application where you can ask questions to your doctor and they respond quite rapidly. And initially I was amazed because, you know, Dr. Degnim, for example, she goes in the operating room and has bigger things to take care of than answering my questions. However, she took the time to answer the questions that I had. So I really appreciated that.
Dr. Degnim, how do you decide if the vaccine is successful when you're studying it? So how do you know if Helen or other women have had success with it?
We are looking at several different responses. So we look at the immune response in terms of antibodies that are produced against the protein in the vaccine. We also are looking at T cell responses, so specific type of immune cell that can recognize proteins and help to coordinate cell death in response to that. And the third thing is we're also looking at the breast tissue. So we compare the immune cell presence and pattern before the vaccine to what we see after the vaccine. So there's a biopsy at the beginning of the trial, and then at the end, when the woman goes to surgery, we take a portion of that tissue to look at this immune response in the breast tissue. So the vaccine that is given, usually in the extremities, we're seeing an impact of that in the breast tissue. Suggesting that the immune response is working as we were hoping. But, you know, we don't have final results. We have preliminary results that look promising, and we need to finish the trial and complete all of the evaluations.
You have shared some great insights with us today, and I'm wondering if you could tell us, just from your perspective, how has your life changed since receiving a cancer diagnosis?
As I think everybody that goes through a time that is challenging, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And now equipped with my radiation pin offered by the team at Mayo, there are some things that I have changed in my life. For example, some relationships that were a little bit negative, and now I have decided there's no room in my life for that anymore. And, you know, I had dreamed for the longest time to spend some time in Florida. I am right now talking to you from Florida, and I don't know if you can see like the sea in the background, but I have decided to make some changes where for the better. I want everything to be positive. I want everything to add value. I want just good things. And one of the things that I definitely want to do is advocate for women, make sure that they go and have their annual checks. Specifically this year, because of COVID, a lot of patients out there, a lot of people have delayed their normal exams. I would encourage them to go back, make sure that they are again on the right track to be monitored so that whatever disease they may have is caught early on. And then again, for the same price, go to Mayo.
We have done an earlier program talking about that very issue, that patients are not only putting off some of their general health care and other concerns, but also the screening studies that would help diagnose cancer. So that was a good plug for getting back to the clinic when you need to. Dr. Degnim, what % of women who are diagnosed with breast cancer might qualify for a vaccine trial such as this?
Among women who have DCIS diagnosis, again, I think it's about 50 to 60% that would have some degree of HER2 expression and be eligible for the trial. For women who have invasive cancer, we typically talk about a proportion of women who are HER2 positive with invasive cancer, and that threshold has always been set quite high. Women who only have very, very strong HER2 expression, but there is recent evidence that even women who have a lower degree of HER2 expression can benefit from immunotherapy. And when we think about it that way, probably similarly, about half of women with invasive cancer may have some degree of HER2 expression that would be amenable to an immunotherapy going forward. Current standard of care is for invasive cancer is not a vaccine. It is to use HER2-directed therapy that goes along with chemotherapy, and that is, there are several of those. So, we are hoping that vaccine therapy will become one of the standard components of immunotherapy for HER2-positive tumors. But again, that's the whole thrust of this research is to, develop that.
Well, thank you both so much. This has been just a fascinating discussion. Helen, I want to thank you first so much for being with us today, for taking time to share your story and give hope to other women. Our thanks to Mayo Clinic patient Helen Gagoud and to Dr. Amy Degnim, surgeon at Mayo Clinic. Thanks to you two for joining us today. I hope that you learned something. I know that I did, and we wish you a wonderful day.
Mayo Clinic Q&A is a production of the Mayo Clinic News Network and is available wherever you get and subscribe to your favorite podcasts. To see a list of all Mayo Clinic podcasts, visit newsnetwork.mayoclinic.org. Then click on Podcasts. We hope you'll offer a review of this and other episodes when the option is available. Comments and questions can also be sent to Mayo Clinic News Network at mayo.edu. Thanks for listening, and be well.